Alex, welcome to the show, man.
Man, thank you for having me, man. I'm really excited. I'm pumped.
Yeah, dude. I'm excited too. So a dear friend of mine, Sarah Centrella, introduced us, and obviously you guys have the Oregon Ducks connection. Her son's currently on the roster, and she's been a big fan and follower of them. And you were an Oregon Duck, and then drafted in the first round of the NFL. And we're gonna get into all that stuff in the crazy journey. But why don't we start with who is Alex today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Man, I like this. I already like how this is going, man. Alex, today, let me tell you, I'm a I'm a dad of eight, married to my beautiful wife for, yeah, right? Eight.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Let's hold
Well, hold on, man.
eight kids.
Hold on. Yes, eight. 28. He just turned 28. And then our youngest is 10.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
I'm a grandfather. Our granddaughter Rue, she's 14 months. Um, yeah, man, I'm a recovering athlete,
Hmm.
pro athlete, meaning, one of the things that I'm sure we'll get into is, we, you look at what you've done, right? And no matter if you're a professional athlete, if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you're a professor, if you're a executive at Nike, when you do something at a very high level, and it takes sacrifice. You're pouring everything in it, and it's cliche, but you hear that: eat, sleep, drink, football, or whatever that is. I tend to shy away from that now, because if you're not careful, what would happen is your identity would get wrapped into that,
Hmm.
and then when you stop doing that, you're lost. And so I went through that whole phase, and it was tough. And I would like to say that, it happened overnight where I saw it and I changed, and I was like, no, no, it took years for that to happen. But now, the Alex you see today is someone who owns up to his failures. Um, I've mastered influence, and it starts with myself, because I didn't know how to influence myself. And so I've done those things. And now, man, it's beautiful, because I've dug down so deep into not just the successes, because we want repeated successes, right? But also the failures. And
Hmm.
where I used to do, I used to sweep them, man. I used to put them in the corner. I used to shovel it up, throw it in the closet, put blankets all over it. But now I dig down deep, and I know, man, there's jewels in there that not just for me to consume, but others. And so, man, now, I speak all over the country. I've spoken internationally. Um, and I coach. So I coach individuals and corporations, small. I like small to mid-sized companies to really understand what influence is, and how to use that to help grow and prosper. So, it was the principles that I've learned from playing this kids game, right? And I know that what I've been taught, because the average NFL career is 3.5 years.
Yeah.
How did this little skinny kid from Colorado Springs, Colorado, do something that only 3% of NFL players do? And that's play 8 or more years. It wasn't because of my size. Shit, I'm 5'10" and a half on a good day. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
I
you
think
know,
I
I
think you're listed somewhere on the internet as close to 6 feet, if not
oh, I like
if it
that.
if it
Okay,
doesn't
let's
say
go with
six
that.
feet. And I've always wondered if the NFL, because I now say it proudly, but I'm a professional wrestling fan. And have had a number of WWE and WWE Hall of Famers on the podcast, and it's been
Okay.
fun, but they all lie about their height. And so I've always wondered if the NFL skews those numbers a little bit. So that's
Man,
funny
they
to hear.
they skew it in the NFL, they skew it in college, they definitely do it in high school. So
I love
but
it.
it, but it wasn't those things that helped me have a long, successful career. It was a framework. And now I take that framework and I teach that. You know what I'm saying? So that's the Alex you see today.
I love it, man. Let's rewind the clocks a little bit and talk a little bit about. I want to go back to draft day for you, right? Like not only playing obviously 8+ years in the NFL, but also the fact that you were drafted in the first round. That's a half a percent of a percent of a percent drafted from that place. Now, what was your mindset on draft day? Did you know you were going in the first round? What was that experience like?
Yeah, man. So yeah, I knew I was going in the first round. You know what I'm saying? Like it was sure I thought I was going in the first round my junior year. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? I was gonna come out. But then I had well he was my agent, but he wasn't my agent at the time. You know, he was connected with me. And I asked him, I said, so what are they saying if I come out as a junior? And he said third round. I was like, third round? Man, I'm better than that. What you talking about? All right, I'm gonna stay another year. And so for me, it was is I wanted to be the most dominant corner that would come out in the 96 draft, but I also want to be the most athletic. So there was no doubt that I would, do that. And so it was, I knew I wasn't going to the first round, but my agent was like, hey, you can go anywhere from the fifth pick to the 15th. And I was like, oh, whoa, you know what I'm saying? That was like, it was more concrete. I was thinking
Yeah.
first round, hey, it's first round. No, they said those numbers. I was like, oh, and then I went to the combine and I had interviews, right? You have interviews, different coaches. And Coach Shanahan, who was the head coach of the Denver Broncos, I'm from Colorado. So I had an interview with him and his staff. I remember going in there and I was all giddy and I was, answering all the questions. And he said, right at the end, I said, Coach, I would love to be a Bronco. And he said, Alex, that's great to hear, but you ain't going to be around by the time we pick. And they had
Mm,
like the 14th or 15th pick. And I was like, that was even more intel, you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Because I know I did a great job on the field. And I know I did a great job during my workouts at the combine and my pro day and then the interviews. So I knew I was gonna do that. And it was always a dream come true to, hear your name called and you walk onto the stage, shake the commissioner hand. Nobody gave him a big ass hug like they do now. They breaking his back.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I was super excited.
Yeah, that's incredible. So let's talk about the mindset a little bit, right? Obviously, the physical attributes are one thing, right? Put in the work, lift the weights, run, do all those things. But what about the mindset? Like you said, no, I knew that I was first round material. How important was having that thought process to the actual manifestation of that day?
Having that process, it started a long time ago. And when I was in high school, I wanted to, I didn't know, I thought I was going to the army like my dad. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't play football until eighth grade. So I was
Wow.
like my football IQ was way behind. Um, but I was like sponge. I would ask questions all the time. I would watch. And when we watch film, I would not just watch myself, but I watched other guys. I would listen to the coaches, not just when he coached me, but when he coached other guys. And I remember in the off season, I wanted to work out with some buddies of mine who really, they wanted to play at the next level into college. And I was like, man, we work out in the morning. Well, it's all great when it's when everybody commits, everybody's words align with their actions, but that didn't happen all the time. And so I would get into my feelings. And then finally I was like, you know what, if I want to do this, I need to understand, because I'm starting to feel it, like it's going to be lonely. So I
Mm,
have to be okay with being alone during this journey, because I'm trying to do something that very few people do, is get a full ride scholarship. So not everybody does it. So it's going to be lonely. And then here's the second thing. The second thing was I need to understand that my goals, and I had goals for myself, individual, then as a team, but for individually, my goals don't care how I feel.
mm,
Meaning, when it's 6 o'clock in the morning and there's snow on the ground, my goals trumps how I feel. I feel, man, I'm warm and cuddly in this nice warm bed. My goals don't care about that. You know what I'm saying? Like my goals don't care that nobody's out there on the field to watch me. They don't care about, my girlfriend broke up with me. They don't care. They're still my goals. And so once I developed that type of mindset, and man, everything else was like, okay, so my goals, if there was a person, if those goals were a person, they wouldn't care how I feel. It's like, hey, you need to get to here. You want to get to here? Who do you need to become? And
Mm.
so I asked myself that, and then I just took that on.
Yeah, and that was at, you said 8th grade you started playing football. By the way, that's a whole another thing. These kids are starting at like 3 now, and
I
they have
know.
these personal trainers and this and that. I have a dear friend whose son is a phenomenal high school quarterback. Um, and I see the work that he puts in, and I hear from my friend Andre about, everything that this kid is doing. It is that extra thing. It's doing the work. It's understanding where you want to go, right? Now, how often would you tell people, and I'm curious this, that you're like, I'm going to the NFL, and they're just like, okay, son, whatever you say, because it is such a small percentage. Were there a lot of people saying, okay, whatever you say?
Yeah, no, I didn't tell anybody.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I kept that to myself. I remember, I take that back. I remember telling my uncle, we was in Detroit for Thanksgiving, and I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. And I remember, having dinner, and we watching the Lions play, of course, on Thanksgiving. And I was watching that, and I was like, I'm gonna do that one day.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do that right there. I'm gonna do that. And we used to play in this open, vacant lot with I used to play with some older kids. And that was the same. So I used to do that on the field. Never really watched it until like that day on Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh, they don't teach. I want to do that. Other than that, I never told anybody. Yeah,
Wow.
that was my goal.
Yeah. Now you talk about, you talked about earlier how, you're a recovering professional athlete, because there is this encapsulating thing when you're at the peak of something, you have to be 100% dedicated. What was that like the day you retired and you realized that you had to rewrite the narrative, right? Like, what was it like after mentally for you to get past those years so you can become the man you are today?
Oh man, that's a great question. Um, it took a while. So when I finished, I was thinking, okay, this is cool. I'm 31. Um, I'm gonna get to work out when I want to work out. I want to play golf every day. I'm gonna drive my kids to school, drop them off. I'm gonna volunteer. I'm gonna do all this type of stuff. And it was great. And I did it for about 6 to 7 months. And I was like, damn, is this it? You know what I'm saying? Like there's got to be more.
Yeah.
And so I was walking my dog one day. We was in San Diego because I played with the Chargers, and who doesn't love San Diego, right?
Great city.
Right. And so I'm walking my dog, and one of my neighbors that, I would see her walking her dog, and, we got to know each other. She said, all right, hey, Alex, what are you doing now? I was walking my dog. What you doing for work? Are you doing anything volunteer? A little bit, take the kids to school. She was like, what would you think about helping us out? And she was a CEO of this nonprofit called uh, Surgical, it was Fresh Start Surgical Gifts. So they would, give plastic surgeries to underprivileged kids. And so, with cleft palates and,
Hmm.
things like that. And so she asked me to be a development consultant, meaning I raise money, I make phone calls and whatnot. And so I did that. And it was great. You know what I'm saying? Like I learned a lot. I always wanted to do something in the nonprofit world. And so what happened was we moved up to Portland, and shortly after that. And so we was up here, and man, it was still the same thing. I'm taking kids to school, all this stuff. And man, I wanted to do something. So I got on monster.com. You remember that Monster?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so going there looking for a job. And I went in there and I saw something. It was a nonprofit world. It was an entry level position. And I was like, oh, this is it. So I shot him an email. It's, told, who I was and whatnot. And then, hey, yes, we would like to interview you. And so I'm pumped. I get dressed up, college shirt, you know what I'm saying? Shiny shoes, shiny belt. That was my job. I was like, I'm going, man, I'm a University of Oregon Hall of Famer, former NFL player. Matter of fact, if you hire me, the NFL will give you $5,000 per year.
Wow.
So I'm like, man, and when this interview, and man, I'm gonna tell you, after about 18 minutes, I knew how to do my homework, my research, and so I did all that, like who they serve, what they do, and all this stuff. And so when she was asking me all these different questions, I was in it. And then she started asking me questions about me, and everything sounded like football.
Mm.
And she kept asking me deeper questions, and I couldn't. And I started, man, I don't know. And then finally, she asked me, and I was tired of saying that. And she asked me, said, "Why do you want this job, Alex?" And I was like, man, being very vulnerable at the time because I got tired of saying I don't know. I said, I just need to get out the house. And she was an older black lady. She said, "Honey, sweetie, you're not gonna get this job." It was
Mm.
it was $42,000.
Mm.
42, Justin. And I ended up uh when she said that, I got into my feelings real quick. And I was like, and she said, "Hold on. Before you go on any more job interviews, let me give you some advice. You need to find exactly who you are. Because right now, honey, sweetie, you don't know who you are.
Wow.
Everything you say is talking about football. That's what you did. That's not who you are." She got up, walked me to the front door, shook my hand. I went to my car and I bawled. I wept. I wept. And that moment changed my life. Now, I would love to say like the next day I found out, I started reading books and I started asking myself questions. No, it's not, man. It took me years to understand that. But it just opened a door for me to start asking questions like, man, what exactly did I want to do? What brought me joy? What am I, what am I good at? You know what I'm saying? I started asking those
Hmm.
different type of questions, man. But it took me years.
Yeah, that's and what a powerful moment to again, like you were at the peak, man, a Hall of Famer, an NFL, defensive back, like doing everything that everybody else would view as like that's it, man. Like you figured it out, and then to have that moment in that interview that opened your eyes, which probably changed the course of your life once you figured it out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when you were going through that, obviously over time you've been able to develop this framework. Talk to us a little bit about this framework of figuring life out, figuring out success, figuring out all these things. Like what was that journey like, and how did you really begin to formulate all that?
Well, great question, Justin. Uh, so, when I started really sitting back and rehashing that uh that conversation with this lady, and I started thinking back, and I was like, man, okay. And it took me a while to really like, okay, okay, Alex, you played this game in the NFL, a dream job. What gave you success? Was it because you could bench press 335 pounds? Is it
Mm.
because you ran a 4.3 in the 40? What was, and I'm like, none of that type of stuff. And I started thinking back and I was like, well, hold on now. I had some great coaches. I had some terrible coaches. But the best coach, defensive back coach that I ever had, his name was Willie Shaw. And I was like, what did he teach me? What did he? And I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something. And so what it was, man, he gave us a framework, right? And so you understand, man, when you get a framework, it's kind of like a house, right? When they put up a house, they put up a framework, right? They pour the cement, they put the wood, they put the framework up, and then they start to build the house. So it has integrity, like it can hold up to anything, the elements. And so what he gave us was a framework. And, you know, I was sharing in a story. So it was my second year in the NFL, and I'm young. I'm, you know, I'm excited. This was going to be my year, right? My second year. My first year, I came off the bench. I was the nickel. For all the football people who don't know football, nickel is the third defense or the fifth defensive back that comes on the field, typically on third downs. And so that was my role my first year. Well, my second year, they put me, I was going to be the starter. And so Willie, they just hired him, and it was Mike Dick. We had a new coach, Mike Ditka, and he hired Willie Shaw. And I remember hearing about Willie. I've heard rumors about him, man. He was like a DB guru. Like he was in Minnesota, he was other different places where everywhere he went, man, he elevated dudes and how they play. And they would play in the Pro Bowl. You know what I'm saying? They was one of the best, and they get more money. So I was pumped, right? So I remember I'm excited. It's our first day of practice, and I'm gonna show out. I'm gonna show him, show Willie who I am. And we went out there, and he didn't say more than two words to anybody. He just observed, right? And so at the end of practice, I was like, man, damn, man, I was expecting to get all type of pats on the back and, hey, man, good job, and kudos, none of that. And so I was like, okay. So we're walking off the field, and then Willie says, hey, 2-5, 2-5. That's my number, 25. 2-5, come over here. So I hustle over there. Willie's he's gonna give me some kudos, right? And he said, he asked me a question. He said, 2-5, do you want to play a long time in this league? I said, absolutely, absolutely. He said, you need to understand and master these three things. And I was like, damn, man, if I would have had a tablet or something, I was gonna write it down. This is gold, right? And he said, assignment, alignment, adjustment. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Assignment, alignment. I know yeah. You need to know your assignment, Alex. I was like, okay. I've been in the playbook. I know what that. I know the playbook. I didn't say this though. I'm respectful. My dad was a drill sergeant, so he said, your assignment. I was like, okay, all right. He said, yeah, Alex, if you want to play a long time, you not only need to know your assignment, you need to know the assignment of others on the field. You need to know what the safety does, what the linebacker does, hell, even what the defensive line does on every snap. That way, you can hold them accountable if they're not in the right spot, and they can hold you accountable. To be a good defense, you need to know what everybody's role is. I was like, okay, so I gotta get into this playbook a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? I got to dive in deep. He said, alignment. I watched you, Alex, and you were misaligned about 50% of the time. You're supposed to be 8 yards off. You're lined up at 7. You're supposed to be half a yard inside. Your head up. You were misaligned on half the times. It was just like you were based off of how you felt. He said, son, this is the NFL. You're going against the best athletes on planet Earth. You do not want to give them an advantage before the ball is even snapped. You can be beat before the ball is even snapped. Whoa, that's my first time ever hearing that. Because of my athletic ability, I was given a lot of freedom. You know what I'm saying? So I've never heard that before. And then the third thing was adjustment. You need to be ready to adjust. Is that nobody lines up and just hikes the ball? No, there's shifts, there's audibles, there's motions. You need to be thinking ahead. Like, what if something happens? You need to be ready to adjust. If you master these three things, you're going to play a long time in this league. Justin, when I say, like, man, when I started like really locking in on that, man, the game slowed down for me so much. And I took that wherever I went, no matter who I was facing. And it gave me success. It allowed me to do something only 3% was that framework, man. And I started, and I took, and so I, once I broke that down and I said, okay, I took that framework and then put it in this new environment. So I need to know how do I align my life? You know what I'm saying? What's my foundation? For me, it's my faith, you know? So I need to get things aligned. And then my, my assignment was really to find out like who am I? What do I like? What do I hate? What do I want to do with my life? You know? And so I started to ask myself these different questions. And then the adjustments, like the different adjustments I need to make on the relationship number one I have with myself. Right.
Mm,
Because I was that entitled athlete. And so I need to change. I was very in terms of relationships, it was very transactional. Like I ain't doing nothing unless you do something for me or I
yeah.
get something out of it. And so I just started to look at my life, man, and I started to apply those three things, man, and just everything just blossomed, everything opened up, man. I started to, you know, I started to I worked as a trainer at Nike World Headquarters. I got to, man, train some of the best athletes on earth. I traveled the globe. I started speaking, you know what I'm saying? Getting paid to speak. Man, it was consulting, like everything started to work out. Not like the next day, but it took a time to be able to develop that framework, man.
For sure. And so you mentioned relationships. How important have relationships been for you, once you were able to get out of your own way? And by the way, most 22, if I'm doing the math right, you're around 22, 23 years old at the time. Most 22 and 23-year-olds need to learn that lesson. If I mean, shit, let's be honest, most 40-year-olds need to learn that lesson. But how important are relationships to you now as you begin to navigate this speaking career and everything else you're doing?
Man, relationships is it's a let's say commodity, but it's very valuable to me. You know what I'm saying? Where it didn't used to be. Like because of the relationship that I have with Sarah, we're we're speaking right now. Somebody's going to be able to they're going to listen to this podcast and listen to your words and my words, and they can change the trajectory of somebody's life. I feel, man, in any situation, what we say and what we do, it can change people for better or for worse. And then so now I look at relationships and like every time, and I'll sit down and have coffee with anybody once.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I sit down with somebody and I get to know them and who they are, and now it's like, well, do I want to have a relationship with this character, with this person? Or, are they trying to get something from me? Are they trying to use my platform of Alex Molden, the former NFL player, or the speaker or coach, or what? You know what I'm saying? So relationships, like when I start, and I really I start looking at my life, and I start looking at like relationships that have come from, some of the bad things that have happened, not just all the good things, right? But the those tough moments. And one of the best relationships that ever happened to me was when I blew out my knee when I was in college. I blew out my knee my freshman year. And at the time, I thought that was all my football life was over. My ACL, MCL, PCL. I got two screws in this knee. I got a
Oh my
scar
gosh.
about I got a scar about that big. And you know, I used to tell people, in spite of this, I played in the NFL first round. Now, when I look at it and I really broke it down and what this negative thing, what it did, I was like, it wasn't in spite of, it was
Mm,
because of this injury. What happened was it formed a relationship that I had with our strength and conditioning coach, Jimmy Radcliffe. We didn't know he was world renowned. We was just he's Coach Rad. No,
yeah.
he's world renowned. Yeah, he would go to Russia and do seminars and write. He wrote books. We didn't know that, but because of this, I got to work with him one on one. A world renowned plyometric speed coach, one on one, 5 days a week, 1 hour a day for 6 months. It was because of that negative thing that a relationship started. And it was because of him I was able to get drafted as well. So there's relationships that come from not just the good parts of your life, but also the negative. And so relationships, man, they mean everything to me, everything, because you never know who they know, right? Relationships is an influencer of why somebody's going to follow you or run away from you. So
Yeah.
they're very, very valuable to me.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it's funny you mentioned how, you'll have coffee with the person once, but how quickly can you sniff out the people that are like, oh, they're just trying to use my platform? Because having this podcast, it does really well, and hosting an event where people reach out constantly, I want to speak at your event, I want to speak at your event. I can quickly sniff out these people who are in it for themselves. So what's your method of trying to figure out what do these people want out of this connection?
Great question. You know, if you're quiet enough and you understand communication, you can sniff it out pretty quick. And so for me, because I understand like the words, that's one way of communicating. You know what I'm saying? Like communication, people only take in about 7 to 8% of your
Yeah.
words. So I'll look at body language, I look at tone, and I look at if they keep bringing or listen to if they keep bringing up somebody else's name, they kind of, or what they've done to kind of push them up in terms of platform. I listen for that. When
Yeah.
really, I want to be able to like, what have you been through? Who are you? What's your character? Right? Character is an influencer. And so because I understand like all these influencers, there's 10 of them, why somebody's going to follow you. Right. And so I listen to all these different things, and I share, but also ask questions to hear people and how they're going to answer. And then I can be able to get like, what's their motive? Right. What is
Yeah.
their motive? What do you want? And doesn't make it good or bad. It's just like, what do you want? For me, like, man, hey, I want to have a great conversation with Justin. And I know he has a following. He has a fabulous podcast. Man, for me, at the root of it, I want to change people's lives for the better. So I was like, man, Justin, Sarah hooked me up. Oh, this is great. Yes, absolutely. When? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's just asking questions, listening. I know words, right? And the actions, and then how people respond. They're a war. If they are they all aligned? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I love having conversations and you know and being honest.
Yeah. One thing that I realized in my journey and when success started to happen in my life was when I stopped trying to be the most interesting person in the room and began being the most interested person in the room. The power of asking the right questions was a game changer for me, and understanding that a superpower is putting others on a pedestal instead of yourself. And I think that is the the difference between people who are looking for something and people who are just looking to connect, make an impact, to do all these things. Right now, you talk about these influences. Talk a little bit about that. You said there's 10 of them. Give us an insight into some of these things so people can be more aware of their own actions.
Absolutely. Well, you know, for me, the number one is character. But when you boil it down, so for me, like I said, I played football. Man, I was 8th grade. I learned football from the encyclopedia.
Mm.
I learned it from encyclopedia. My dad, we had no damn internet. There was no internet in the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
84, 85. There was no internet, right? There was no magazines for football wise. And so my dad was like, man, you're checking the encyclopedia. So I look inside. So I learned the game of football from the foundation, simplify. What is it? And so when you look at leadership, it's influence. And so character, which is who you are, that's number one for me. It's number one that I want my kids to understand, right? Like who they are, and then who are the people that they hang around with. So character is one, relationships is another, right? The relationships that you have with other people. The relationship number one, the most important one is one you have with yourself, right? Um, Communication. how you share, right? How you share. It's an influencer. Knowledge, of course, which is what you know. Ability, which is especially in the sports world, right? Ability, what you're capable of, that trumps everything for
Mm,
most people. And all you gotta do is turn on ESPN and look and
yeah.
see these different folks, these different these athletes that, man, they get away with literally murder.
Yeah.
Like I mean, there's fans that, oh no, they're still cheering for them, even though they're on, you know what I'm saying, because they won championships. Or there's documentaries, right? That people give them a pass.
Yeah.
I got I got a pass. I got many a passes because I was good at football, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ability is one. Um, one of the most powerful one, actually the most powerful one, is intuition. How you feel, right? And then so I look at it from internal, but also external. How you make others feel.
Mm,
There's cats in prison right now, based off a decision of how they felt in the moment, right?
yeah.
In the moment, they made a terrible decision, and now they're locked up. Intuition is powerful, but you can use it on other ways, not just making somebody feel bad, but making them feel, man, seen and whatnot,
Mm, yeah.
right?
It's powerful. It's really, really powerful. And it's and being able to dive in and reflect on these things, I think is a gift, right? It was a gift that was given to you later in life after you left football to be able to go, hey, let me reflect on these things about myself. What is, what am I not only doing internally, but also externally? And I think people lack the internal conversation. Like you mentioned relationships, first beginning with myself, right? Like how important is that relationship with yourself as you navigate, you know, life, being a father of 8, which is blows my mind. I have 2 stepkids and it's craziness at all times. I couldn't imagine 8. So what is that like to be able to, continue to grow that relationship with yourself?
Well, it's really like looking back at your life and looking back and like looking at the mistakes that you've made, right? Not just the mistakes though, but also, man, because I want continued success. Well, what helped me with that? You know what I'm saying? So when I start to ask myself different questions and then answer those questions, man, all of a sudden, like I know how I work. I
Mm,
know the environments that give me success. I also know the environments that can cause me to fail. I don't like failing, so I don't put myself in those environments, no matter what anybody says. Where I used to, because it was popular and it was, your what they call it, peer pressure. Yeah. So I take those things and I've learned from them and now I share them. And I do it with my kids. Yeah, your daddy used to smoke weed. What? Yeah, I was a freshman and I thought it was cool. And I did it for a whole month every day after school. And then I finally looked in the mirror and I asked myself, I said, who are you? This
mm,
this is not you. This is not, you say you want to do this. Me talking to myself, you say you want to go to college. I don't think they do this in college. And that was the last time I ever smoked weed. You
wow.
know, there's different things that I ask myself, and man, I just start to answer them. And so, when it just to get a better understanding of who you are, you have to ask yourself different questions. And for me, it always starts, whether it's myself or with my clients. It's like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And then, okay, what relationships do you have or do you need to get you there? And then, who do you need to become?
Mm,
So I ask myself, I use all those, what knowledge do you need to have? Your abilities, like what do you need to do or to be mindful of to get you there?
yeah. No, it's so powerful. I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on this show. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Mm, success. What is success? Man, for me, success is, man, for me, how can I, what I do, what I say, what I produce, how can I make this world a better place? And then from there, even a little bit deeper is, okay, that's the world. What can I do? The things that I teach in my own house, how can I make my family be make a positive impact on the world,
Mm.
right? And who do I need to be the leader of my family to make sure those things are are happening, and then to be able for myself, my family, my kids, my wife, for us to go out and be a positive impact. What are those things that I need to do? So it's, for me, it starts at home, right? And having principles, having like what we stand for, values, right? The discipline, like all those type of things. That's, for me, that's what success looks like. It's like having a positive impact on the world.
I love it.
And then you said that your
Three
second one,
things you
the
do
three,
every single day to ensure that success.
man, three things I do every single day is I make sure I'm connected with my faith. Uh, what I do, so that's one. I give my wife a hug and a kiss every day. I give my kids, I make sure that I give them discipline and love. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was, man, my dad was a drill sergeant. He's a, he grew up without a dad. So, and then in that era, it wasn't a whole bunch of hugs and I love you, son. There wasn't a whole bunch of that. I knew he loved me. But for me, like, I make sure my kids walk out with a feeling every single day, not about what they do or who they, or, what they've done. I got athletes in the house, right? It's not about that, man. It's who they are. So I'll make sure to tell them that I'm proud of them. I give them physical affection and love, and I tell them I love them. Every time we on the phone, we hang up. It's not like, okay, bye. No, it's never that. I love you, son. I love you, sweetie. You know what I'm saying? Like every time.
Mm-hmm. It's
But
powerful. I
because,
mean, it's
yeah, because I know that it's the little things. It's the little things that can give. It's the same thing that gives people success, and no matter what professional football player, it's the little things, the details. It's the same thing in any other environment. It's the little things.
yeah. And it's the things that are overlooked sometimes, right? Like how passive people can be about the little things. Hey, look, I'm focused on the big picture instead of the little things adding up to the big picture. I think most people miss that, right? And I love the fact that you said, to impact your home first, right? Like I believe in the idea of like get your house in order. Like make sure everything is good at home, therefore you can then make the impact elsewhere. Like I love that mindset. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get your book? What's all the good stuff?
Well, but thank you very much, man. You can, hey, Alex Molden. You can go to my website is alexmolden.com. On all social media, it's Alex Molden. So I try to keep it simple, man.
That's the best way to do it. That is
Yes,
absolutely
sir.
the best
Yes,
way to do it,
sir.
man. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question since the show is called the Growth Now Movement. That question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh my goodness. My biggest moment of growth. I would probably say, man, it was that moment when I was on that job interview. And I buried that story. I didn't even tell my wife that story because it hurt
Yeah.
to my core for so long. That it changed me internally, but I buried it. So, man, growth for me is now, and it's the same principles that I had when I was playing ball. Is I don't remember a ton of all the successes that I've had. When I watch film, I was looking for what can I get better. I looked at the failures, and then I would learn from those things. So I look at the things that I do wrong, how I miscommunicate. I say one thing, but I don't follow through with it. There's nuggets for growth in failure. And you know, I used to tell stories, when I used to speak early on. of all the successes I had. Coming out the tunnel, thousands of fans screaming, winning or going to the Rose Bowl, doing all this type of stuff. The thing is most people do not relate to success, they relate to failure. So when I start talking and start being vulnerable, when I start talking about those things now, instead of at the end of my speaks, people, standing up and clapping, whatnot, they come to me afterwards with tears in their eyes.
Mm,
So,
powerful.
yeah.
Alex, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. But more importantly, thank you so much for making the impact in the world that you do. So many people would take that success and just ride off into the sunset. And here you are making a massive impact, man. So thank you so much.
Justin, man, I appreciate you and what you're doing. I'm a big fan. I'm definitely going to check out not just the Anthony Trucks interview because he's a duck, right? But I'm gonna
He is
check
a
out.
duck.
I'm gonna start down. I'm gonna put this in my in my cycle. When I walk the dogs or when I'm folding laundry, man, you're gonna be part of that now. So I appreciate what you're doing, champ.
I appreciate it, man.